Hello.
Welcome, Venerable Robina.
Here we are. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Were there many questions coming up in the chat box? I was curious to know.
Yeah,
we've
got a few from last session. Yes, we've got some from last session, and there's a few people who've just put them in now.
Many questions in the chat box?
Yes.
Sorry,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. How many? 6, 10?
Yeah, 8 or 10. Yeah.
Okay. All related to meditation, what we've been talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So we'll have some questions first. Okay, good. Let's have some questions.
Okay, so we'll start from last session. I'm not sure who asked this because their name is just iPad, so I'm not sure. The best way to view our mind habits then, is it to focus on it, i.e. viewing a child with love or annoyance and see the mind habits behind this?
Okay, now there's different ways of working on our mind. So as we're going to get clear here, the particular way we're going to do this meditation, there are 2 phases to this Mahamudra meditation. The first one is we're going to use concentration technique, to focus on the mind. So what that means is literally, this is a non-discursive technique. It's not constant. It is concentration. So there's no discursiveness, but the thoughts are going to come, aren't they? Because that's what our thoughts do. So this first technique, the first component of the Mahamudra technique, is you, instead of, let's say, doing a concentration on your breath, which is we're all maybe familiar with that, you focus on your breath. Here, we're going to focus on whatever pops up in the mind. Now, eventually, the object of concentration is called the clarity of your mind. That means when your mind is very stable, and most of us might not even get to that, where your mind is really steady, and the clarity of the mind is said to be the conventional nature, not clear. It's quite sort of a bit abstract, but when the mind is steady, the object of concentration is the clarity of the mind, which is more subtle than saying merely whatever pops up in your mind. But you start with that. So in that meditation, it is not discursive. So the goal is to merely watch whatever pops up. Let the thoughts come and you let the thoughts go. There's no analysis. There's no analyzing what you think they are. There's no involvement in the thoughts. There's no wishing the thoughts would go away. There's no conjuring of thoughts. We all know the mind is never stopping. So this key skill is to learn to focus, to use your attention, to pay attention to whatever is there. That's it. Now, that's a very specific approach, and it's very difficult because we get involved in our thoughts and then we lose track of what's happening. This is a really brilliant technique throughout our day. It's so important to do this. And there's no analysis, there's no judgment, there's nothing like that. And that takes time to cultivate. And that means you're developing strong concentration where you don't get distracted and get involved in the thoughts. And it's hard to see the difference in the beginning, So that's one thing. Now, the point is, in our daily life, sometimes that's good to do, but in other times what's good to do is you do analysis. You're at the kitchen, you're washing the dishes, your hubby's there, he's drinking his tea and he's slurping, and you can't stand the slurping. I mean, there's always things we just don't like. We don't have to have heavy things to happen to want to kill your husband. It builds up. So things annoy us. So normally we're not paying attention to the anger. You're sitting there doing the dishes and you're cursing him in your head, but sometimes we don't even notice we're cursing him. This is what's so shocking. We're not even aware of our thoughts. But here, this other technique is you notice you're chatting to yourself. I wish you'd shut up. That noise is making me crazy. And you're about to say something, but then you stop yourself and you check and you talk to yourself. You literally be your own little therapist. Well, give it a break, Robina. He's allowed to slurp his tea. It's your own problem. It's called your aversion. There's nothing wrong with making a loud noise. It's okay. You just relax your mind. And the more able you are to do that, that's the real job you're doing day to day, to change your mind. That's a very specific approach. approach. You're trying to change your mind. You don't suffocate the anger. You don't defend the anger. You hear it, you take responsibility, and then wisdom in you, it's like two little parts of you, your crazy part and your good part. They have an argument, and you're trying to calm down this crazy roommate called anger. That's really day-to-day practice. That's full-on day-to-day practice, working with your mind. And the more you do this kind of meditation, or even just watching your breath, there you're developing the skill to simply focus and step out of your head and not do analysis. That develops the ability to, in daily life, to see more clearly and more quickly what on earth is going on in your mind. It's very practical, you know. So that's a longish answer, and I hope that answered the question, because there's different approaches. So what else?
Thank you. Robin is asking, does the guru have to be a lama, or can it be a venerable?
The word guru is heavy with qualities. The equivalent in Tibetan is lama. There's no generic thing called a lama. Your lama is your guru, is your spiritual teacher, and you decide. And that person can be, you know, a lay person. It can be a male. It can be a female. It can be a nun. It can be a monk. It can be a person. It can be His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is renowned as a high lama, or it can be some little simple person that nobody knows. That's your decision. It's your decision. You do the research, you check on that person, you check their reputation, you check their teachings, you check what they say, you do your due diligence, in other words. And it can be whoever, you know, okay, if you can't decide that, you know, Federer is your Buddhist guru because he teaches tennis, not Buddhism. So you look in the area of Buddhism. If you want a cake teacher, you don't say Federer is your cake teacher. He might be good, but you need a cake expert. So you look in the area that you want, and then you slowly develop relationships with that person. And then you make the decision in your mind. And then, of course, formally you can ask and that kind of thing. And then you develop a formal relationship with that person. And then you do the main practice, which is your mind every day in your meditation. When we are the disciple, we learn to see the guru as a Buddha. And that's a whole discussion. We might go into that. You know. What else?
Leah is asking, when Lama Tsong Khapa saw the Light Buddha Manjushri, did he then describe what he saw and an artist drew an image of this? And is this how we know what green Tara, medicine Buddha, and all the light Buddhas look like?
Well, that's an very interesting question. Absolutely. The only way we know is from people's experience. Exactly, that's right. But there's an interesting point here. Yeah, that's good enough. That's a really good, that's a nice way to put it. Yes, excellent. It's exactly right. I mean, it's all described in the texts, and it's got great meaning. So these artists, like the Tibetan artists, learn this very sophisticated, very precise kind of way of painting. Manjushri holds this, and Tara does this. They've all got these, it's like a visual language, and they learn that. But indeed, the absolute experience of this has come from the high beings who've had direct experience of seeing Tara, seeing Manjushri. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Leah. What else?
Julie is asking, she says, I have a new distraction to my practice. I see the new level of lack of morality and fear in society now, and I feel this everywhere I look. And this has really unsettled me. And I'm asking your opinion on how to not get so upset about all the horrible, pervasive anger or misery.
Really, exactly. This is the wisdom wing and the compassion wing. So the point is, let's say you've never studied nutrition. You've never thought of healthy people and unhealthy people, and suddenly you become the best nutritionist in the world. Even a little bit of being a good nutritionist. I bet everywhere now you see unhealthy people. You didn't even notice them before, Julie. That's exactly the same here. As you start to see your own mind and you learn about, you take on this particular practice called Buddhism, it could be any other set of morality, suddenly you're seeing it in your own mind, and then, because you have the knowledge, you're seeing it everywhere you turn. So, okay. The point is, it's been like this since the beginning of time, honey. It's only that you're finally waking up to it. It's always been this way. It has always been this way. There've always been unhealthy people. You just have never learned nutrition before. There's always been crazy people. It's called samsara. So the wisdom wing is the work where you focus on your own mind. You see the delusions. You see the lack of ethics. You see all the rubbish. You listen to the teachings and you reflect it back to yourself. And even then, through the mirror, through the lenses of the wisdom wing, that's how you see the world. And then you look around and you go, oh my God, I can't believe it. We're all the same. Look at these people. Look at the lying. Look at the stealing. Look at the lack of ethics. Look at the suffering. And you don't get depressed about it, or angry or upset or think, oh my God, what can I do to help? Not yet. You've got to realize this is samsara. You've got to really realize Everybody, nobody knows how to eat properly. Everybody's full of attachment and craving. Everybody's got bad nutrition, and we're talking mental nutrition here. So you learn about it, and then you get more and more courage in realizing it isn't your true nature and you can change, and that at least you know that they are the same. They can change too, but you've got to focus and become very familiar with it. And then slowly, you then are able to have empathy, not anger. Why have anger? I mean, we're angry with ourselves. It's foolish. You start to realize everybody's in the same boat. Everybody is suffering. Look at the suffering. So the more you can see your own suffering and own it, and then own the causes, the more you can then realize, my God, we're all in the same boat. And then slowly, as we progress in working on our own mind, we're able to say, what can I do to help? And that's how you try to cultivate compassion. Having fear of it, it just means we haven't dealt with it in our own mind yet. The more you deal with it in your own mind and get some renunciation and some courage, the more it doesn't freak you out, because you realize everybody's suffering, and that turns into compassion. Slowly do it. What else?
Frances is asking, well, she says, I have restless leg syndrome, inability to sit still for long. So my question is on the authenticity of practicing calm abiding while walking, maybe slowly and mindfully.
Of course, darling. But I mean, I would like to suggest, I don't know if you, I mean, I'm sure everybody tells you some doctor or other you should go to see, but from the Tibetan medical point of view, which is similar to the Chinese, this is just the wind energies really agitated, you know? I mean, we've got these subtle physical energies, and this is this model. You don't have to like it. I'm just suggesting. So maybe, I don't know if there's Tibetan doctors around wherever you live. I mean, certainly acupuncture, I mean, that's your business, but there's something you can do about it, you know? I don't know what the material, I don't know what the allopathic system is concerned. I don't know what system you use, but I know certainly it would be something that certainly the Tibetan medical system, maybe there are some in Melbourne or Sydney. I don't know where you live, darling. You can check it out. But meanwhile, of course, if you can't sit quietly, I mean, that must be very distressing. Then you can walk. Of course you can. There's all kinds of meditations that Buddha taught. And, you know, one of them is called walking meditation. You're training your mind to focus. That's, you know, eventually as we get more sophisticated focus, you've got to do it quietly, because the mind, you go beyond the senses. But walking is a really good one. Of course it is, darling. You train your mind to stay focused. Absolutely. Definitely. What else?
Just a final comment from Deep, who says that he feels blessed beyond words for this opportunity to hear Venerable Robina today, and may you live a long and happy life.
Well, I'll do my best, okay? I'll bully death into submission. I'll do my best, all right? Thank you, Deep. Okay.
That was all. Oh no, sorry. One more just popped up. When you were talking about being annoyed, this is from Brad. When you were talking about being annoyed by the husband slurping the tea, I thought of Satipatthana Sutra, or the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and its instruction.
Your voice just went all wobbly then. I didn't hear you properly.
When you were talking about being annoyed by the husband slurping the tea, Brad thought of Satipatthana Sutra, or the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and its instruction to just say to yourself, hearing, hearing, hearing. Is that valid?
Okay, that's a good example. That's another type of approach. There's dozens of different approaches that you can use, and that's one where you simply can isolate it as mere sound. This other one is more analytical, where you argue with your anger, which is the result of attachment. That's a more sophisticated way of analyzing and deconstructing your thoughts. But that's exactly a valid one. That's just like watching it without any comment. Mere sound. That's perfect. It's brilliant. But eventually, in order to lessen and transform and get rid of these conceptual stories, this approach here, we absolutely need to do analysis to deconstruct all these conceptual stories and go and look beneath the anger and beneath the attachment. And that's how we eventually get rid of them, you know. So yes, it's a valid practice, absolutely. But there's many approaches according to what we're capable of, you know. Absolutely. Okay, let's continue the advantages of having concentration. All right. This is, you know, this technique's been around for several thousand years. Just remember that. It's not something hippie-trippy new thing made up by the hippies in the 1960s, not like that. And it's the potential of every single person. It needs an immense amount of work. There's no question. You don't get this by doing it 5 minutes in the morning. For this one, to just do it seriously, you know, you've got to give up. It's like, there's no way you can become like Federer by playing tennis in the morning. You've got to fully commit yourself to tennis 10, 12, 14 hours a day for years. Same here, but it is our potential. Yeah, your body always feels light, like as if you've got no body. There's this pliancy of the body is extraordinary. I always remember there's one Lama, some of you might know him from seeing pictures, called Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. He's passed away now. He was what the world would call grossly obese. He had to be carried around. I've no idea why he was like that. But you look at his face, he was blissful. He was radiant, like as if his body was light like a feather, you know. Very interesting. So your sleep is like meditation. I mentioned that. Now you develop clairvoyance. This is something so fascinating. Right now, we know in the world, there are lots of people who say they're clairvoyant. And mainly what happens is they get flashes. You know, you might be in your dream and you'll get a flash of something. Many people have that in their dreams because your subtle mind is more capable, your dream mind. So you'll see something's going to happen or you remember something in the past. But most people, it's just like moments of it. You go to some astrologer or some person who does the tarot cards or some person who reads your palm, and they have moments of flashes of insight. And that's about the best we can think of in our culture. That's how we think of it. But that's like just kind of every now and again you touch on the piano and a pretty sound comes out because you don't know the theories. You don't know the methods. You haven't got the method. Well, this is the method to get clairvoyance. And I don't just mean occasionally, but this is the point about subtle mind. When we understand the Buddhist analysis of the mind, gross consciousness at the mental level is conceptuality. Now, this is what's fascinating. This is including our emotions. When we think in the world, we think emotions and then we think thoughts, separate parts of us. They are not separate parts. The reason that anger, which we think of as an emotion, is actually also a conceptual story is because it's based, when you hear anger at a more subtle level, so you could argue with it, it's this assumption that how dare bad things happen to me? How dare my husband slurp his tea and upset me? Anger and attachment are totally self-centered conceptual stories, completely based on ego. But because we think they're so normal, and then because we think they're physical, we are very gross in our understanding of them. But the more subtle we can go into our mind and hear these conceptual stories, we will realize they are concepts. The only reason that they're emotional is because we've thought these thoughts so long, and indeed we come into this life programmed with these conceptual stories so that they're automatic. Like I said, my mother didn't have to teach me to be angry. The moment my sister did what I didn't want, I'd have a hissy, I'd get to have a fit and shout and yell because it was my habit. But that's what we're familiar with, the gross level only. But as you control your body and speech first at junior school and don't shout and yell and don't swear at your husband, you then are working on your mind. And you listen to the conceptual story. It's all conceptual stories. So we live at the conceptual level. It's very gross level of cognition, a very artificial way of cognizing phenomena. But we don't know anything else. Neuroscience doesn't know any other way of knowing. We just don't know. It doesn't exist in our psychology or our science. This is what these amazing Indians and indeed the Buddha have discovered, these subtler levels of cognition. So then the conceptual level, we can, think about, people say, oh, a past life. Who remembers a past life? Don't be ridiculous. I mean, that's a joke. We don't even remember most of today. And in Sydney, it's 12:30. If you had to account for every second of what you have thought and done and said accurately since you woke up, you'd be a miserable failure. So forget about this life. A few moments we might remember of this life and forget about a past life. So this clairvoyance, this capacity to, clear seeing, to see phenomena that are more subtle than the objects of knowledge of the grosser conceptual cognition. The level we function at, once we've understood this subtler level, once we've understood clairvoyance, we'll realize how gross and how limited our conceptuality is, not to mention our senses. So clairvoyance is the capacity of the mind at a subtler level. Once you've subdued the grosser levels, once you've subdued the conceptuality and the sensory, it's the capacity of your mind at this subtler level to cognize phenomena that the grosser level of mind simply can't, which includes the past, the future, the minds of others, long distances. And this clairvoyance, as we progress spiritually, will grow to limitless degrees. This is something completely cosmic in our world, but this is literal and all in the literature, all there. And as you become more and more realized, you get concentration, then you realize emptiness, you become a bodhisattva. You can't even conceive of the stupendous power that you have to see the minds of others, therefore to know how to help them. I mean, there's always one story I tell about Lama Yeshe, the author of this book, my teacher. At Kopan years ago at our monastery in Kathmandu, one of my friends, Harry, was a monk at the time, an American. He was helping one of the boys. It's a monastery of now hundreds, then a couple of hundred, maybe then 100, of these Sherpa monks, and also Tibetans and other Nepalese, different areas of Nepal, like Tamang and all these things. So this particular monk, this Sherpa, he was very sick, and Harry had found a doctor to help him. So then Harry happened to mention to Lama Yeshe, this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s, he happened to mention to Lama Yeshe that he'd found a doctor to help this monk. And Lama Yeshe said to Harry, oh, don't worry, he doesn't need a doctor, he's fine, you leave it. So Harry, having faith in Lama Yeshe because he's his guru, he doesn't help the monk. Well, Harry kept noticing the monk kept getting sicker and sicker, and then eventually the monk went up to the mountains back to his family and he died. Now, on the face of it, it sounds like Lama Yeshe was being very cruel, but not caring about this monk. But Lama Lundup, the abbot of Kopan, he passed away now, he said to Harry, well, Lama's clairvoyant. So clairvoyance in this whole path to Buddhahood is really low-level realization. We've had it many, many lifetimes, Buddha says. But, if you've got clairvoyance and you've used your subtle mind to realize emptiness and you've got bodhicitta, you've got this, you're an amazingly powerful person. Your only purpose is to benefit others, and you have the wisdom to see their minds because you've got clairvoyance, and you know, therefore, how to help them wisely. So Lama Lundup explained to Harry, well, because of Lama's clairvoyance, he could see clearly the mind of this monk. He knew exactly the karma he'd created, that is the cause of this present sickness. And he could see clearly that if he'd had a doctor, he would have gotten better, but he wouldn't have finished the heavy karma he had created that caused the sickness. So next life would be even worse. So on the other hand, Lama could see, and truly based totally on his compassion, that actually for the monk to continue to be sick and then go up to home and die, and in fact he had a very peaceful death, a very good death, he would have completely purified the karma and next life would have been fantastic. Now, who's got that level of wisdom? Nobody. I mean, talk about tough love, And that's what clairvoyance is. I mean, the Buddha would say we can't even begin to help people until we've got clairvoyance. But because it's so cosmic and weird in our world, there's no equivalent of it. And even if we do think about clairvoyance, we don't trust it. We have no methods of how to cultivate it. But that's exactly what this is. One of the consequences of getting concentration, samadhi, is you get clairvoyance because you access consciously and clearly your subtle mind, which has the capacity to cognize. It's then when you get cognition, when you get clairvoyance, that's when you can prove karma and prove reincarnation. So it's something serious and necessary, not just some hippie-trippy thing. Aren't you clever? You can see the past. And so you can help sentient beings. That's the only purpose for it. I've lost my page. Okay, so Lama Tsong Khapa says that you will develop clairvoyance. According to the Abhidharma teachings, there are two kinds of clairvoyance. One is what we understand as intuition, an untrained sense that we all have to some extent. For example, you might feel strongly without any logical proof that something has happened to your dear friend back home. The other can be gained by training the mind in meditation, just as we're discussing here. You're able to see long distances as well as other people, including their minds. At first, your experience seems a bit like a dream, but the more your concentration develops, the more clearly you can see, just as you would if the person were there, right in front of you. This kind of clairvoyance is not imagining something. It's real, in the present, not a fantasy. Normally, with your deluded thoughts, you create images of your boyfriend in your mind when he's not there, let's say, and it's almost as if he's real. But when it's clairvoyance, you literally see your boyfriend. So the only reason to have this isn't just to be clever. The only reason to get the bliss is just all these are byproducts. And the great yogis use all this power so because they've got focus to get insight so they can really benefit sentient beings. It's the only purpose. It's the only reason for this. Okay, that's enough to get us excited. But what's very interesting, in terms of if you've studied the Lam Rim, if you've studied all the stages of the path, this technique fits in like the middle scope, in like high school, on the wisdom wing. In fact, as a Hindu teaching. And then you combine it with realizing emptiness, which is also a middle scope teaching. It's a Hinayana teaching. But these two are taught in the context of the Mahayana path. They're taught at the end in conjunction with the other perfections of the Bodhisattva. And one of the reasons is because if you start to get concentration on the wisdom wing and start to get bliss and clairvoyance, you can get very addicted to this and you'll forget about compassion. Whereas if you leave this until later and you mix it with compassion, it becomes very powerful and you can't get distracted. It's very interesting. So now the next one is now we meditate on our mind. So this is where, like I'm saying, it's, the typical concentration meditation technique that the Buddha teaches is on the breath. And it's a perfect start. The breath is something that happens naturally. It's just, you don't have to bring up the breath. It's just there and you anchor your mind to the breath. And the training is to stay focused. Now so let me now describe this technique in a very down-to-earth way, because we have so many mystical ideas about concentration meditation, mindfulness meditation, single-pointed concentration, shamatha. One of our problems is, one of our misconceptions is that it's a relaxation technique. It isn't, okay? Like, can you imagine when you first start to learn to drive, you're learning to train yourself to drive the car, aren't you? You're training yourself to stay in the lane on the freeway. Can you imagine if someone says, oh, you've got to relax a minute, relax, and you've hardly learned to drive yet? You will laugh at them. Excuse me, shut up. I've got to concentrate and forget about relaxing. It's only when you know how to drive well that you can relax. And Lama mentions this as an example. But in the beginning, you've got to be like watching like a hawk. You can't afford to sit back and relax. You don't know all the techniques yet. Well, that's very much the point about concentration meditation. We're not familiar with focusing on our mind. Our mind goes all over the place. It's completely insane. So to say that it's a relaxation technique is a joke. Now, yoga has many relaxation techniques. Please do them. They're marvelous. But this is not a relaxation technique. Concentration meditation is not a relaxation technique. 2, it is not an alternative to a pill. This is such a concept. Like if I'm in love, if I'm my boyfriend, who's my boyfriend? Damien, let's say, is my boyfriend, okay? Let's say Damien is my boyfriend and I'm in love with Damien and we're all completely blissfully happy and he's adoring me and I'm adoring him. And someone says you should learn to meditate. We would laugh at them. This proves what we think meditation is. We think it's when things go crazy. You only do it when you're having a mental breakdown. I'm only doing it when Damien started looking at other girls. No, that's ridiculous. That's, for me, the analogy I use this a lot. That's like you've never heard of car mechanics in your whole life. And you're driving your car and you're driving it and you drive it to the ground and you've never paying attention to what's going on. And then you're 120 Ks on the freeway and suddenly you realize your wheels are falling off and you go, oh, what'll I do? My wheels are falling off. Well, it's a bit late, isn't it? How about you learn about mechanics? If you'd start seeing them when they were wobbling, they would never fall off. Well, this is a perfect analogy. We wait until I want to kill Damien. We wait until we're so depressed, or we wait until somebody abuses us or accuses us of murder before we start looking into our mind. Why? Is because of attachment. Because when attachment's getting what it wants and where everything's happy and Damien adores me, I'm thinking, aren't I happy? But I'm not realizing that attachment's a honey-covered razor blade. I'm not realizing that danger is imminent because I'm not looking at my mind. Just because you drive your car and it feels so gorgeous, you don't even notice when things go wrong. That's the biggest problem we've got. So we leave it until way too late to work on our mind. Way too late. So the Buddha is simply telling us that he's got these skills that we can learn to use, starting with concentration, where you can learn to become familiar with your mind and you get to see the wheels wobbling. So the wheels wobbling is the ordinary example of your husband annoying you with the slurping. Not wait till he's nearly killing you. Just look at your anger. You look at it when the little things happen, and then you can handle it at that level. It's manageable. When the wheels are wobbling, it's manageable. But when they're falling off at 120 Ks an hour, I'm sorry, forget it. Damage control is the best you can expect. It's such a powerful analogy, but we're addicted to that in our culture. We don't look at our minds until we go crazy. We don't look at our mind until you can't get out of bed one morning. We don't look at our mind until I want to kill Damien. It's just too late. But if you learn the skills before that, when bad things do happen, you know how to handle them. So this technique is not an alternative to a pill. It is not a relaxation technique. It is not to get a good feeling. I mean, this is like infantile. Please just eat ice cream and get a good feeling. It's much cheaper and easier. And it's not to have a spiritual experience, you know, or it's not to make all the thoughts go away. Long term, absolutely, you have subdued the thoughts. In the beginning, the thoughts are berserk. And in fact, they even say in the texts that a sign of success at the first stage of concentration, as described in the text in terms of 9 stages of cultivation, very precise, very technical. The sign of success at the first of the 9 stages of concentration is that you think your mind is getting worse. Just like Julie said before, she's now, because she's noticing her own mind, noticing her delusions, noticing all the lack of ethics, she's now noticing it in the world. Honey, it's always been there. Our mind has always been crazy. We just have never paid attention. So when you start to pay attention, you're shocked at what you see. Well, that is a good sign. It is a good sign. I cannot stress this enough. And this is one of the major stumbling blocks we all have in our culture when we try to do some concentration or some mindfulness. We all think our mind's getting worse, and we all get very distressed. Oh, I've been meditating for weeks. My mind is even more berserk. No, it's not more berserk, or it can be sometimes, but it's a good sign. And this is a very powerful concept. I always quote this story. A friend of mine, a monk, one of Lama Zopa's students, years and years of serious meditation retreats, 3-year retreats, 4-year retreats. And at some point, he was out of his brain with rage and anger. He was shocked himself. And you'd think you'd be shocked because you're thinking, for years and years meditating, surely I must be better by now. So he went to Lama Zopa really distressed. And Rinpoche laughed and laughed and laughed. Fantastic. The dirt has to come out. The dirt has to come out. Now, this is also true in our lives, you know, like when, say, something terrible happens to you, someone accuses you of doing something you didn't do and takes you to court. You're shocked by this. You think, this is terrible. I didn't do this. This can often happen. It's often the dirt coming out. If you're really practicing, you're encouraging negative karma from the past to ripen and get rid of it quickly. So it's actually a good sign, but it's hard for us to see that because we can't stand the pain, you know. So just like you go on a fast, if you go on a fast, you know, you're going to have smelly farts and smelly breath and yuck coming out of your skin. You don't think it's a bad thing. You know, it's a good sign. I'm not joking, but it's just that we don't like it, you know. It's a good sign. It's just like when you go to the gym. You come home after the first day with muscles you didn't know you had, but you're happy. You're not freaking out and go to the doctor. You know it's a good sign because you're now testing your muscles. It's the same with your mind. This is something, if we could really comprehend this, we would be much more courageous, you know. But because we're junkies and we want all the pain to go away and we can't stand the pain, we just think, I'll meditate and it'll all go away. It's so naive and it's so mistaken, and it's not like that. It's training our mind, and the sooner we start to do it before the problems come, the more able we are to handle the problems when they do come. You get the wheels when they're wobbling, you can fix it, but not at 120 miles an hour and they're flying off the car. I'm sorry. It's a good analogy. So this concentration meditation the purpose is very simple. The long-term result, like we're talking, is you've got super focused, super clear, super subtle, non-conceptual, non-sensory consciousness. Yeah, cosmic for us. That's the long-term result. But for us, 99% of us won't get that because we're not in the right conditions. We're not going off to the mountains. Unless you've done masses of meditating in a past life, you won't get it just by doing some at home, you know. You just won't. But it doesn't mean you won't get benefit. So this is the point. The criterion of success in the beginning isn't that the thoughts go away, is not that your thoughts calm down. They might occasionally, but the real benefit, I can't stress this enough, the real benefit for most of us in day-to-day life, The real benefit is that if you're sitting there for 5 minutes and you're watching your breath or watching the mind, we'll go into that in a minute, but the same principle. Let's say you're watching your breath. It's easier to say. You're watching the breath. You're anchoring your mind to the breath. You're paying attention to the breath, and you're making a strong determination. I will not waver. Of course, you will waver. You'll rush off. You'll follow the thoughts. You'll get distracted, but you bring your mind back to the breath. You bring your mind back to the breath 50 times a minute, and you're training yourself to stay focused. So naturally, the thoughts are going to be berserk. Of course, they're going to be berserk. That's what their nature is. But you don't get caught up in them. You don't resist them. You don't resent them. You don't wish they weren't there. You just allow them to come and you allow them to go. This is a skill. Well, it's exactly the same here when we change the object of concentration to be the thoughts themselves, not the breath. The thoughts themselves. And it seems more tricky to do this, and we'll try it, we'll do it. But this is the first mode. This is the first phase of the Mahamudra meditation. The main object of concentration is your mind itself. And your mind means whatever pops up in it. Whatever pops up in your mind, you're training yourself to pay attention. That's it. That's the job. So so Lama talks a bit about that very nicely. I'll just quote some of the things he says. This is very nice little analogies, He describes, but first of all, we'll describe, this is a classic presentation of the two main obstacles to the accomplishment of concentration. And you'll recognize we're very familiar with this. The two main obstacles that prevent us from even 30 seconds having our mind on the breath or on the object, in this case, it'll be the mind itself. The obstacles are the tendency of the mind to be uncontrolled, overexcited, never stop thinking, or the tendency of your mind, the moment you sit down to meditate, you go straight to sleep or you space out. They call this excitement and sluggishness. So they can be very gross levels, which means you sit down to meditate and within 5 minutes, you've completely forgotten what you were doing and you're rushing off thinking about all the angry people. You forgot completely that you're meditating. That's an extreme example of excitement. And the extreme example of sluggishness is you just go straight to sleep. You wake up 5 hours later, what happened? I was meditating. They're the two completely extreme examples, the two major extreme obstacles to getting the mind to focus. So this concentration for us is like almost an invisible place in between these two extremes. In our daily life, think about it even emotionally. When the mind is all excited, that's attachment energy, and you're all up and you're all high and you're all delicious and everything's going wonderful. It's all excited, it's over agitated, and it's excitement, it's attachment energy. That's excitement energy. We have that one. And then you have the other extreme emotionally is when your mind's completely miserable and depressed and inert. We have those emotionally. We go between these two like drunken sailors all day, up and down like yo-yos, because we have no control over our mind. Well, here we're talking here more technically, the capacity of the mind to go chat, 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 or the capacity of the mind to space out. These are the major obstacles. And when they describe the techniques in the texts, the first several stages are this constant adjusting of the mind, getting more and more skillful at the adjusting of our mind to take it away from the excitement and to take it away from the sluggishness, until eventually you've got incredible clarity. You've accomplished a certain level where your mind can be effortlessly on one thing, effortlessly, just like that, That really takes time. That really takes time. So it demands great effort to do this technique properly when you're learning it, how to adjust the mind, But the way Lama talks about it is very easygoing, very sweet. And here, like I said, this first mode of meditation, concentration, the object we are going to train to focus on isn't the breath, isn't a visualization, isn't, is simply whatever pops up in your mind. So we might just do this without even much discussion. We'll just do it now for a few minutes and you'll see it's kind of weird. You try to focus on your mind, but suddenly you can't see any thoughts. You don't know what's going on. It's very odd. So we'll just try that without any discussion, okay? So get yourself comfy. This is the first phase of a Mahamudra meditation, the first one. Get your body comfy. And you just be normal now, close your eyes as if it's the most natural thing in the world. And you're going to, for 3 or 4 minutes with strong determination, I'm going to pay attention to my thoughts, whatever pops up. No discussion, no analysis, no arguments, no worries about it. Like you're just watching television with no comment, you know, not even saying this is this, this is that. You merely pay attention. See if you can do it. 3 or 4 minutes with determination.
Can't hear you, can't hear.
I've got to mute. Okay, I'm here. Okay, now I'm going to just look at some of the things Lama says when he talks about now meditate on your mind, you know. So he says, maybe you're not sure what it means to meditate on your mind, you know. It's simple. The Mahamudra way is to start by contemplating your concepts, just watching what pops up, your thoughts, right? The views of your own thoughts. Normally, you see, when we're noticing our mind is when we're having a very powerful conversation, when you're annoyed with your husband, you're upset with the person said, when someone's accused you, you know the pain is unbelievable, isn't it? having these huge conversations and you can't possibly stop the conversation. It's just unbearably painful. We're resisting it, we're resenting it, we're hating it, it's not fair, how dare. This is the usual time we notice our mind, but we're fully immersed in this dialogue, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So this is kind of powerful to try to merely just observe. And you don't even, like before somebody said, you don't even say sound, you don't even say that, you just watch it without comment, and you learn, and the goal is you're learning to focus. So eventually, as you get better, because you're not buying into all the concepts, when you have a conversation with your concepts, they build up. It's like putting petrol on like oil on the fire. But if you don't have conversation with them, they're going to calm down eventually, although it's very hard for us to do this. But that's why this is such a good technique, you know. So we just observe the thoughts and then we let go, as Lama says, you know, no intellect. We don't analyze our thoughts. Leaving the mind as it is, like this, is the special emphasis of this meditation. You don't even say thought. You don't even say that. You just watch. You merely pay attention. It's quite powerful, but quite difficult, because we can't help but defend ourselves and get hurt and resentful, because the sense of I is in the very center of all the conversation, isn't it? And it's very hard to get past that, you know. So then Lama talks about this, you know, no need to clean the mind. So now let's practice. Just watch your thoughts. We did this, but just listen to this, you know. Maybe not literally watch. Language is a problem. Be like the sunlight, which merely shines. Normally we think our mind is bad, deluded, and we have to make it clean. You know, that's how ego thinks all the time, always dissatisfied with what's in our mind. I'm angry, I'm attached, I'm depressed. But mind's nature is clean, clear. Clarity is a fundamental characteristic of mind. And I mean by that it's not physical. It's just thoughts. So in Buddhism, this applies both in philosophy and in meditation. You don't need to make an effort to make your mind this way or that. You just need to leave it alone. This is particular approach, okay? Its clear light nature is pure from the beginning, and this nature exists forever. So no expectations. This is a huge one. Abandon expectations, any hope, say, for a high realization. Abandon expectations of any kind. Just let go. Keep the concentration strong and be satisfied with that. Losam Chökyi Gyaltsen, Panchen Lama, says that you should, quote, allow your conceptual mind to you should not allow your conceptual mind to entertain any fears or expectations and to enter equipoise, concentration, without the slightest distraction. Oh, how marvelous. That's eventually, you know. In other words, when you reach a reasonably clean, clear point without emotional disturbance, don't start worrying or get too excited. No, just leave it there. Avoid even positive concepts. Avoid all concepts, even positive ones, such as, oh, how wonderful if all sentient beings can reach Buddhahood. That is not valid here. Even if you have a memory of your past life as some Himalayan yogi, or you have some fantastic vision, even if the Buddha comes, do not follow it. Let go of it immediately. Don't think I'm trying to get you to forget about everything, your normal life, or maybe I should just go to sleep and forget everything. No. Panchen Lama mentions this. It's not the cessation of mental activity. This is not the cessation of mental activity as when you faint or fall asleep. No, in the development of concentration, all such thoughts are interferences. You're trying to not have thoughts. You can't make them go away. And that is, you see, this is a massive difference. Let me explain this in daily life. This is a huge difference. And again, when we get this, we'll really be on track with practice. Right now, when we have conceptual thoughts, all the dramas, all the emotions, we're caught up in the dialogue, aren't we? We're caught up in this big conversation in our head. And then we increase the anger, increase the fear, increase the jealousy. It's like putting oil on the fire. Now, another time, you're trying to work on your mind and you're meditating and anger keeps popping up. But you don't follow it. You just watch it. That is the difference is this. That is like purification. The dirt is coming out. So the difference between merely watching your anger and letting it come and letting it go, and then buying into the anger and making it worse, that's the massive difference. So that's why when we see, that's why my friend, the monk who had so much stress about all his mind being crazy, he wasn't intentionally being angry. He wasn't intentionally being arrogant. He was not trying to buy into it, but it kept coming, you know. So that's different. So it's a bit like if I go to my friend Rosetta, she's my friend, and I'm raging on about how mean Jason is, that's increasing anger. She's buying into my anger. She believes me. She said, isn't he a creep? Isn't it terrible? How dare he do that? And I'll go away from that 10-minute discussion more angry. But if I go to Rosetta to try and explain my feelings so I can understand myself, and I explain my anger, that's not being angry. That's different. That's working with it. So we have to know the difference of either just allowing the thoughts to come and go, and you know it's your mind and you're seeing it, it's coming up, and it keeps coming up ever more subtle. I promise you, the dirt gets ever more subtle. You watch it and you don't buy into it. That is not being angry. That is purification. We have to see the difference. And then we get more courage, you know, because we're very terrified of our minds. We can't stand the pain, you know. That's why we're so desperate. We wish it would just all go away. But we have to learn to confront it, to hear it, to see it, and to live with it. And we get better at that. We get better at that, you know. Get more courageous. So mentioned is not this. So this is not the mental. This approach is not the cessation of mental activity, as when you faint or fall asleep. In the development of concentration, all thoughts are interferences, good or bad, because you're trying to get focus, not conceptual. This is why you need to stop following them. You stop buying into them. You just watch them. That's where you've got to have courage, because if you're watching television or even just reading the news and you're seeing all this garbage wars and everything, we're terrified. We don't want to look at it. Well, if we can't look at the wars on the outside, that means we can't look into our own minds. But as we can learn to look at our own minds and see the garbage but not buy into it and know it's just stuff coming up, we get very courageous and we don't get so scared. We don't get afraid of it. It's very powerful, very necessary, I tell you. So because our habit to go to the form, the sound, the color, the smell is so deep, we must use great skill to keep our awareness strongly on our consciousness, just on whatever pops up, without, you know, keep mindfulness or memory continuously. We also have the habit to go to the past or the future. We never stop raving on about the past and the future. We never stop these conversations in our head, and we buy into these conversations. That's why we make ourselves crazy. We get so distracted, you know. We must break this habit too. Remain focused on the clean, clear state of your own mind. The Yogi Tilopa says to place the mind on the consciousness alone, without anything else. Eventually, our muddy consciousness, all the chatting, our superstitions will settle and become clear. What makes them settle and become clear is that you stop buying into them. You stop arguing with them. You stop having a dialogue with them. That's what makes them calm. Continuous, non-stop mindfulness. Mindfulness means not forgetting what you're doing moment by moment, is the resource of awareness. Like the sun. Your consciousness is like the sun. Just like the sun's rays shoot out from the sun, your thoughts or your views, right views and wrong views, manifest from your consciousness. Whatever thought you experience, keep your mindfulness of it continuously. That is the meditation. Like space. Your mind is like space. When the rain comes, the space is not disturbed. Rain falls, but still it's part of space. When the rain is strong, it's disturbing, but when it stops, things become quiet and peaceful again. The rainfall is similar to all your superstitions. When they are manifesting, it's disturbing, but they still have non-duality nature. still their original nature. Even all the crazy thoughts are also clear in their nature. Like the ocean. Your mind is like the blue ocean. It's there, you just watch it. Your thoughts are like the waves. Waves manifest from the ocean, but they are still part of the ocean. When a wave rises out of the ocean, there's some turbulence. When it drops back into the ocean again, it's not different from the ocean, is it? Like the full moon. Your consciousness is like the full moon. On this earth, all the people and fishes and chickens and trees, all the organic things are moving, functioning, but the full moon is just there. Your intensive awareness remains intensive awareness of consciousness, even though the distractions themselves are coming and going. They are no longer energize you. They no longer distract you. You remain on your mind with intensive mindfulness. As Losang Choki Gyaltsen says, tighten by making taut and look nakedly at the nature of that which is clear and knowing, your mind, in other words, and recognize any conceptual thoughts that arise. Learn to let go. When you reach the point where you can experience the clarity of your own consciousness, then try to let go. Keep your concentration a little loose rather than exerting tremendous effort. Don't squeeze your mind. Too much effort, too strict discipline, over tension, is no good. You need to learn to let go. Keep your mindfulness continuous. Mindfulness is not forgetting what you're doing moment by moment. Keep your mindfulness continuous and experience the clarity. When the mind is stable, let go. In this state, you experience quiet, joyfulness, even bliss. Let go has many meanings. When you drive a car, for example, once you're aware of the right speed, the overall situation, then you need to just let go. Relax. Then you can relax. But if you're only just learning in the beginning, you can't. And this is what Lama says. You can use your awareness to watch the essence of the superstitions. You don't need to lose the awareness. Oh, wait on. I missed a page. It's almost, okay, when you relax, you can enjoy the drive. It's almost as if the car is flying, isn't it? But new drivers can't do that. They're always trying to adjust things. They're too nervous, too tense. It's the same with new meditators. You have to learn to let go. If you don't know how to let go, you never experience bliss. When you try too hard, you get headaches and high blood pressure, and eventually you hate meditation. Just the sight of your meditation cushion makes you want to go nowhere near it. So learning to let go is extremely important. When you know how to let go, the root text says, you will be liberated from superstition. When when mind bound in a tangle is relaxed, without doubt, it frees itself. When you know how to let go, you taste the blissful chocolate cake of meditation. Then each time you go to meditate, you will enjoy it. Of course, the difficulty is to get to this spot. You hear so many people who do many years of retreat or even long retreats. One of the problems is you get this incredible tension, and they call it in Tibetan medical system, they call it lung, when the wind energy are just completely berserk, and you get so much anxiety. It can be so terrible, because you push too hard. So it's this really fine balance we have to find between over relaxing and too much tension. And it's very subtle. You've got to really learn to be experiential to find that. And learn, as Lama says, you learn to be happy with it. Don't keep pushing yourself and criticizing all the time. Don't reject distractions. This is an important thing. Don't feel bad when distractions come. Of course they will. The mind is full of distractions. That's the whole point. Don't get upset and reject them. There's no need to think, oh, this is ego, it is bad. Recognize that these deluded thoughts, the dualistic thoughts, the superstitions, the anger, the jealousy, the fears, the dramas, are simply a manifestation of your consciousness. Look at the essential nature of the thoughts. They are also clear in their nature, as we discussed. When they come, instead of rejecting them, just look and then penetrate into their essential nature. In other words, just watch them. Whether it's watching a violent movie or a peaceful movie, you simply watch it. That's the point. You don't judge it or wish it wasn't there or wish it was nice. That's what we all the time do. You watch whatever comes. Or you can think that the thoughts are like the birds or the airplanes or all the organic things that move in the space of your mind. They come and they go. Just let go. You can use your awareness to watch the essence of these superstitions. You don't need to lose the awareness. Panchen Lama says that you should recognize as movement of the mind whatever conceptual thoughts are generated, and without blocking them, focus on their nature. Instead of what we do is we launch into an argument with them or wish they go away or something. You know? If you're too distracted, relax and watch the breath. So if the distractions are too strong, it's better to stop the meditation on the mind and do the 9-round breathing meditation. Or you can simply watch the breath. Breathing meditation is simple. Breathe, but don't think about the breathing. Using the breathing techniques, we can help our supersensitive schizophrenic mind calm down so that we can again contemplate the clear mirror of our own consciousness. Sometimes people don't know how to breathe, and that creates tension. Notice that when you are sad or depressed, you sigh deeply, don't you? Breathing is very important for health. You should be sensitive to the movement of your breath. Breathing well can even energize bliss, while breathing wrongly can cause problems. These techniques can quickly cut the gross levels of the superstitions, and soon you'll reach a point where your mind is more neutral and you can go back to the clarity of your mind. Persevere and be satisfied. It's important to put energy into the practice from the beginning and not to give up. The Vinaya texts illustrate this with an example. If you want to make fire by rubbing 2 sticks together, you have to be persistent. You can't just give up and then start over. It will never work. It's the same with your concentration. And that's where we have to have some confidence that these are techniques that work, you know. If you just, I know today in the Russian talk this morning, one person said, we're talking about meditation, but she said, you can see that the thoughts never stop. It's never ending. What can you do? Because we believe it's never ending. We don't have techniques in the modern world for this. We don't have these ones. We just don't have it. So we assume this is my nature. My mind is berserk. What can I do? No wonder we kill ourselves. No wonder we go on pills, because we can't cope. But when you know that this is a technique here, yes, a long time to get the result, you have confidence and you don't buy into the junk so easily. This is what's so important, you know. Lama Tsong Khapa emphasizes that when you get some experience of clarity, be satisfied. Or even if you don't, be satisfied. You just tried, you know, you did some work. Don't think, oh, this is not enough clarity. This is not what my Lama means. No, you understand. You're over-intellectualizing. You need to discover what is right through experience. Don't go by mere words. Perhaps you should, perhaps you have some special experiences in meditation and then they go away. Don't be disappointed. They are valuable. They are your experiences. It has nothing to do with intellect, nothing to do with the books, nothing to do with my words. It's important to recollect these experiences. They show you what you can achieve. At other times, you can have perfect experiences, but you don't recognize them. You just throw them into the garbage. When I do retreat, I have some experiences too, small experiences. When I recollect my retreat, I'm satisfied. I'm not saying I have great experiences, but they're good enough. I think all of us can have moments of bliss, or even of simply not being disturbed by the concepts. That's super. Remember these times. They're your experiences, not someone else's. So, yeah, any questions about all that? Because this is the first phase of Mahamudra meditation. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the next phase. This is the first one, where you learn to do concentration meditation on the mind. That's the technique. So any questions about this, please? Any questions at all?
Yes. Maria said that when we did the meditation, she found it difficult not to label it.
Of course, darling. No big deal. Join the universe, Maria. It's like saying, I tried to ride a bike and I tried to ride a bike, mummy, and I found it difficult to stay on it. Yes, honey, that's exactly right. But if the technique is valid, you have to persevere. Of course it's difficult. Oh my God, we spend our lives doing this. But this is to hear this, to know it's possible, should be encouraging. So be humble and persevere. Go on.
Robin is saying, I get lost in the words watch the mind. Am I only interested in the vision that I see when my eyes are shut, like a TV screen? Or am I watching or listening to the conversation that comes
That's
up?
all. That's it. The thoughts. Yes, the thoughts. I mean, our thoughts also are very visual. If you're talking, you're thinking about the boy you're in love with, there are thoughts, but it's so visual. You think he's like there because the thoughts are so strong. But it's the thought you're trying to watch, not a vision. Your thoughts. The mind is full of like 1,000 thoughts a second. We don't notice. It's the thoughts. Watch your thoughts. That's it. Eventually they'll calm down, and then it's called you focus on the clarity of the mind. That might take time to get to. Meanwhile, whatever pops up, you watch. Just listen. Listen is another way to put it. Yeah, listen. Watch is a bit weird. True, of course. Don't be too literal. It's not your eyes. Just notice. Be aware. Pay attention. Pay attention. That's all. Yep.
Wendy is asking, what are the antidotes to excited energy and sluggishness when they appear?
Good. Okay. So when you notice, when the thing is to catch it before it goes berserk, to catch your mind over chatting, you just have to be, this is, okay, now, okay, let's go back a bit. Lama doesn't talk about this in here, but when we study the mind in the text called Lorig, we study these different states of mind. So like I said, you've got the neurotic, deluded ones. These are the emotions, attachment, anger, depression, anxiety, jealousy. Then you've got the good ones, love, compassion, kindness, generosity, intelligence. And then you have these mechanics. That's my term for them. So there's many of these, and some of them are working there all the time. But we never literally notice them because we don't think like this. So you've got one that's called intention. Intention is there every second. I will. So intention has to be all the time. I will watch the breath. I watch the mind. That's intention. I'll watch the mind. Then you pay attention. If these two go, you forget what you're doing. If these two go, if you forget that you're watching your mind, that's when there's, okay, if intention is not there to watch your mind, you'll stand up and go and have a cup of tea. Because as long as intention is there, you'll stay there watching your mind. And then you pay attention. So there's intention, attention. Then there's one called discrimination, which is working every second. That's discriminating between what you're doing, all the bits and pieces, you're noticing what's going on. They all got their own job. Then there's one called mindfulness. That's the part that's the ability to not forget what you're doing. And we've got to work really hard on this one this time, because what's going to happen is you will forget what you're doing and you'll start chatting. You'll start chatting. That's the excitement energy. You start remembering something or think about something, and off you go having a chat. That's when you really have excitement and you've lost the plot. So then suddenly mindfulness will come back and it'll help you notice you've just gone off. So you'll stop the excitement and you'll come back to the breath. It's like if you're riding a bike. If you forget what you're doing, if you forget that you're riding a bike and you fall off the bike and you fall on the ground and then you look at the lovely sky and you sit there for 10 minutes looking at the sky, it's a very nice experience, but you forgot the job. The job is to be on the bike. So you have to notice what you're doing. You have to catch yourself as quick as possible. And all these bits work together. Intention, attention, discrimination, mindfulness, they all work together, doing their bit, So each of them has their own function. So the more you have these pieces doing their work and the more mindfulness is trained, then the second your mind wanders off having a chat, mindfulness will help you bring it back. And then you pay attention to the breath again, or the mind, whatever it is. So you just have to practice being conscious. Now, the same with your mind becomes sluggish if you start getting a bit spaced out. This is a big danger for many people because some people can sit very comfortably in what's called meditation. And they can sit there for 1 hour and they can say, oh, I had a really nice meditation. But actually what you did for 1 hour was you were spaced out. It is not meditation. That's a cause of ignorance. So you've got to discriminate between the mind becoming sluggish, kind of loosening and becoming sluggish, and the mind being clear and steady. It's a very big danger for some people, So it's just training yourself to notice ever more skillfully what's going on. That's the answer to that. What else?
Jen has said, where should one start if in an acute emotional or psychological state?
Start, you mean meditation? See, this is the wheels. Listen, it's a good example. That's the wheels falling off. So you're asking me that at your 120 kilometers an hour on the freeway and literally your wheels are falling off. Well, what do you think your job is? Your job is to do as much as you can not to die. You've got to deal with the drama right there. And that means at least protect yourself from going crazy. So have a friend, take a pill, go to your therapist, do something to protect yourself. You know, you don't just sit there. If you've got some ability to meditate, I mean, the point is this, the other answer to this is this, the ability to deal with the wheels falling off is equal to your how much driving you've done. So if you're talking about having a severe mental problem, a severe emotional crisis, but you've done no work on your mind, then if you're driving the car at 120 Ks and your wheels are falling off and you haven't done much driving, you don't have much chance to do anything. But if you've driven for 40 years, you'll be more skillful. So how much work you've done on your mind is determining the answer. So if you're really desperate, don't just sit there and try and watch your bloody mind, please. Go get a friend. Go get someone to help you. Go to your therapist. Do something to protect yourself, to help yourself, steady yourself. And then when you can be steady, you can start to look at your mind again. I mean, I wouldn't recommend, if you haven't done much work on your mind, that you sit there and try and meditate when you're going crazy. It's just ridiculous. It's just silly. Depends on where you're at and how much work you've done on your mind. That's the point. That's a major part of the answer. I hope that makes sense. Go on. What else?
Brad has made the comment that the meditation we did felt like standing in a bathroom with a wall mirror on each side, and you look in the mirror and see your image reflected endlessly.
God, sounds terrible, Brad. Was that good or bad, Brad? Better tell me, Brad, put your mic on. Is that good or bad? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, just the first, that just rose. It felt good. It felt good, just like, boo.
Oh, God, okay. Well, I'm happy it's good. You mean the one of just watching your mind?
Yeah, they're just the Mahamudra. Oh, yeah, just.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Just watching your mind.
Yes.
That one. Okay, well then, Brad, just keep moving, baby. But as long as you remember the exact purpose of it and how to do it, don't start wandering off and call it some cosmic thing. Just keep on track, you know. Do you understand?
Yes. Thank you.
Brad. Thank you so much, darling. What else?
Hannah asked a question earlier in regards to the story of the Sherpa monk.
Yeah.
She was asking, couldn't the monk have purified his karma by the Buddhist practice without having died at that time when he went back home? And
Okay.
also, wouldn't the decision to allow him to die by not getting the doctor for the monk cause bad karma because of the decision leading to his death, even though it was done with a compassionate mind?
Okay, the first part, Hannah, we have to take the view here, to take this story seriously, Hannah, and I'm happy to see you there, darling. To take this story seriously, we have to take this view that Lama Yeshe had the wisdom to see clearly this monk's mind and to have the wisdom to know the best way to help him. If that's not the case, then you're absolutely right. If you don't trust that doctor, then you're right to ask that question. But we're taking the view here that Lama was a valid doctor and made a wise decision based on his clairvoyance and based on his wisdom and based on his compassion. If not, then you're right to ask that question. So it's the fundamental question was Lama Yeshe a valid doctor? And that I can't ask you to decide that because you've never heard of the man. So I'm just giving you this story based on the assumption that he is a valid doctor and he did make a wise decision. And that's the benefit of having clairvoyance, which is also the benefit of having wisdom. You know, we have to take that view here. And the second part, if that's the case, there's not a fraction of negative karma. There was only positive karma because it helped him in the end. It helped him purify his negative karma so that he continued on his spiritual path. So it was actually virtuous karma. There's nothing to be negative there. There's nothing to regret. There's no negativity if it is as I'm saying it. That's the point. So I hope you get my kind of the bigger picture point of this, Hannah. I hope that answers your question, darling. So I understand your point exactly. Next question.
There's no more questions, but there is just a thank you from Julie for your response to her question earlier. She said it was so helpful.
Oh, I'm very delighted, Julie. Thank you so much, darling.
And then no more questions at the moment.
Okay. So were there any questions from before that we didn't answer? No?
No,
No.
we've read them all.
Okay, good. Okay. So, I mean, Hannah's question is a good one because it's a very powerful point. What I just said was that story of Lama is quite a shocking one, actually, because it's not the way the normal world would think. But I mean, I think you can find analogies, you know. I mean, even just think simply of your mother who really sees you, little 5-year-old Hannah, having a tantrum, and she's not doing what mummy said, and mummy has told her 4 times to not have to do something, and Hannah keeps doing it, and Hannah's got a very little mind, and she thinks mummy, and then suddenly mummy shouts at her. Well, she's got, of course, mummy, she thinks mummy's terrible. I know it's a naive little example. It's tough love. So if mummy is a wise mother and has compassion, we've got to take that view. Mummy can't pretend to be, you know, we know when we're children, mummy says, I'm doing it for your own sake, but we just know it's because she's angry. We can tell. But if we really do trust our mother and really trust she's got wisdom and really trust that she's coming from compassion, then it's a valid thing to do. Go to your room. I've told you 4 times, you go to your room right now. And Hannah will learn something. But you have to assume the mother has got wisdom and compassion. Well, the level of wisdom and compassion we're talking here with Lama Yeshe is clearly more advanced. We have to take the view that that's a possibility. That's the whole point of that story, Hannah. That is a possibility. That level of wisdom and that level of compassion is a possibility. That's the point here. So, okay, we have 30 minutes left to go. Well, no, we don't. What do we have? We do, don't we? That's right, 30 more minutes. Okay. So let's have a look. So I think we should finish now with just me reading. This is where changing completely different gear, and this will completely space you out. This is hearing Lama talk about emptiness. This is when we drown in confusion. So we'll put it all together. I'll end you with this, and then tomorrow we can go into how we learn to meditate on emptiness. But this is where we get so confused. We're going to jump in the deep end now. So chapter 8, before meditating on Mahamudra, because there's 2 phases to it. This first phase is called concentration. And that's hard enough. And then we're going to do the second phase tomorrow, where we learn to try to realize the emptiness of the mind. So I'm going to read this chapter. Before meditating on Mahamudra, establish what exists and what doesn't. We're just a name. I'm going to get it up on my screen. It's easier to read it than having to bend down. Okay, hang on a second. Okay. Page 65. All right. Chapter 8. We're just a name. So you just kind of meditate, just listen to this and just kind of drink it in. Try not to analyze it too much, just to hear it. You know, just to hear it. And if you've heard about this 1,000 times or never before, treat it the same way. Just let's listen, just listen to it. Let it go in, you know. We're just a name. The great 2nd century Indian scholar Nagarjuna describes the way we exist. The combination of our 5 aggregates, our form, feeling, discrimination, non-associated compounded phenomena, and consciousness, is given a name. The name is a label which comes from a concept. That is it. That is the reality, conventional reality, no more. But the characteristic of ego mind, and that's Lama's term for ignorance, maripa, the root delusion, the deepest delusion in our mind that clings to this misconception of a concrete, solid self. And Lama's term for it is ego mind. And this ego mind, perhaps it's better that we say ego wisdom, because in a sense, ego is so intelligent, so skillful, completely knocks out our reality. We can also say we're a combination of the 6 elements, the usual 4 plus consciousness and space. To these elements, a name is given. The name comes from the mind. The mind looks at this combination, then gives it a name, a label, and this is the conventional reality. It doesn't matter how important we hold it to be. The way it exists is no more than that. I mean it, no more. The root text quotes Nagarjuna. The individual is not earth, is not water, is not fire, is not wind, is not space, is not awareness, is not all of these. Yet what individual is there other than these? In other words, if we go looking for something more among each of the 6 elements, no way can we find anything there either. In Buddha's terminology, this is the meaning of conventional. In itself, a phenomenon is not absolute, but the ego holds things as absolute. Ego wants absolute me. We hold on to an absolute I, which is totally non-existent. There is no absolute I, nor are there absolute 6 elements, absolute 5 aggregates. There are none, scientifically. When we understand this, we see that if something were existing from itself, it couldn't change. Nothing exists like that. Ego exaggerates. Ego wants. Ego wants. When it's summertime and it's 100 degrees, the ego wants absolute reality Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola becomes the absolute solution. The view is totally wrong. It's exaggeration. Coca-Cola does have a relative, conventional, artificial quality, but how can we say it is absolute? When the ego mind cognizes something, there is no room to accept it as it is. Ego mind has to go beyond the relative way that the thing exists. For this reason, Buddhism emphasizes understanding interdependence as the logic to prove non-duality, non-self-existence, emptiness, non-duality, Mahamudra. We already understand this to some extent. There is no Scott. Take Scott, for example. We give the name Scott to the group of 6 elements sitting here. There is this combination here, and then we say the name Scott. 3 things are involved in this process: your mind, the name, and the conventional reality of Scott's 6 elements. Okay, there must be some reason we say Scott. There is some reason, always there's some reason, but that reason is superficial. There is no absolute quality at all. There is no absolute phenomenon there. Something just kind of occurred, like some wind coming. Scott is coming. All there is, what Scott is just some interdependent phenomenon linked with the thought. Our superstitious conceptual thought says the word Scott. All this is just a bubble, so interdependent. There is this combination, these parts, and then we give a name to them. That's all. We cannot go further than that. We cannot say Scott is special, but we are looking for more than that, something objectively existing. Our ego is not satisfied, especially if we are attracted to Scott and we project some quality of handsomeness onto him. Our ego tries to project handsomeness onto him almost beyond his capacity. When we go beyond the interdependent conventional level, then it becomes absolute. But it's a false absolute, isn't it? Maybe today we can hold that projection, but tomorrow it disappears. And then from his side, his own ego's side, he also doesn't want to accept himself as the convention, at the conventional superficial level, as an interdependent phenomenon. His ego also goes beyond the conventional reality of himself. His ego is also holding such a concept of handsome, which is absolute for him. He puts that label onto parts of himself. Sometimes he puts it on his eyes, sometimes on his nose, sometimes his mouth, sometimes his neck, perhaps his navel chakra. He tries, but no way. It's like he's forcing extra things onto himself. In other words, what I'm saying is that he holds such an absolute, unchangeable, unconventional, unsuperficial view. He feels, this is my reality. Scott is merely labeled. Scott does not exist in any of the elements of his body, any of the parts of his mind. It's like a car before it's assembled in the factory. It's just a bunch of things, right? It's not a car then. That combination of parts is not the car. It's the same with Scott. The combination of Scott's parts is not him. Now, if we put Scott in front of a mirror, there are two things, right? The reflection of Scott in the mirror and Scott in front of it. So in our judgment, we think Scott is the true one. The one in the mirror is just a reflection. It's not Scott. But from the point of view of the great yogis Nagarjuna and Lama Tsong Khapa, within both of these atmospheres, the body of Scott and the reflection of Scott, there is no Scott existing. The reflection is not him, and neither is the bubble of his elements. Both equally are not him. It's not, the combination of parts is Scott and the reflection is not. Normally we think this, but realistically, if you try to find Scott within these two spheres, you cannot. No way. Scott comes from the name, the label. That is why he's existing. Other people's concepts produce the artificial name, the label, then Scott exists. For this reason, all conventional reality is produced by the superstitious mind. For this reason, Scott is not earth, Scott is not water, Scott is not fire, Scott is not consciousness, Scott is not space. Between the elements and the name, the superficial view, that is the only existing Scott. We cannot go further. All there is the totality of Scott, the non-existence of Scott, the Mahamudra of Scott. But we want to go beyond the name, don't we? The conclusion is each of the elements individually is not Scott, and the group of them, the combination, is not Scott. Becoming Scott depends on the label, the name being given to the elements. This connection between the name and the elements is the way that Scott exists. The operation of these is Scott. When we can non-conceptualize in meditation our experience of Scott, our mind reaches beyond the conventions of Scott. If we stay there a while contemplating, and then after our session, we open up to his atmosphere, his elements, he'll seem like a mirage. Is he there or not? Is he real or not? Somehow there is some vibration there, but it's not absolute. In other words, the absolute Scott disappears. When we are seeing with the ego, we always feel that Scott is absolute, which is totally wrong. It's because we have not tasted the non-duality of Scott. We really believe I'm here. Here we talk about Scott. I use him as an example, but it's the same for each of us. We feel I'm so solid, I am this, I am that. We believe I'm the important one. We hold a dualistic view of our own self. Our responsibility is to observe this view, the way ego mind grasps the I as self-existent. Do I exist as I believe or not? We have to check that out. We really feel that somewhere within our body or mind, I'm here. This is a totally wrong conception. It means that we do not recognize how things operate conventionally, how they exist interdependently. We can't accept it. We feel that we have some absolute reality. The conventional self exists only for the relative mind. During Mahamudra meditation, we're not trying to destroy the conventional view of I. Anyway, that is not the problem. The great yogi, the enlightened one, Tilopa, said to his disciple Naropa, "My son, you are not bound by awareness itself. You are kept in bondage by your concepts that have such a tight hold." In other words, the reflection of phenomena appearing in my mind is not itself the problem. The problem is that we stimulate the mind, shake the mind with the dualistic opinions. You are this, you are that. So we need to learn to not judge with such artificial concepts. This is good, that is bad. You understand? We need to eliminate this kind of thinking and to broaden our view of reality. I want you to understand that the conventional I exists only for the conventional mind, a valid conventional mind. But ego mind feels that there is an I here that isn't dependent, that exists without depending on any other phenomenon, that is solid. That is ego's concept. Conventional relative Coca-Cola operates only for the relative mind. It is not possible for Coca-Cola to become absolute. It is a combination of elements gathered together. Then we give it a name. Then it becomes Coca-Cola. It's the same with ourselves. What we call I am this, I am that, is only the connection between the name and the elements. That's the only way we exist. Because of our superstitions, our delusions, we create the fantasy of conventional existence. But the ego mind doesn't want to accept this. It wants to make it absolute, but it's not possible. We need to knock out the intuitive ego. The problem is, as long as we hold the concept that our self exists objectively within the five aggregates, that such an I is existing from itself without depending on anything, then we do not touch reality. We either overestimate or underestimate. So the unique skill of this Mahamudra meditation technique, and we haven't got into it yet, is that it banishes these conceptions. Seeing things as absolute in this way, holding the concept of an independent I, is not an intellectually created idea of ego, philosophically made up. We could supplement one philosophical view about ego for another, but this will not solve our problem. We need to knock out the intuitive ego, the simultaneously born ego, the inborn ego. It is because it is so instinctive that it is so difficult to catch its projections. For this reason, we need a clean, clear state of consciousness gained first from concentrating on the clarity of our mind. Then we can cut the superstitious thoughts, go beyond ego, and discover Mahamudra. So I think that'll do for today. I haven't talked as fast as normal, but still you've got your money's worth. I'm still faster. All right. I always say this, and I always feel so stupid saying it. But one time, Miffy in Brisbane, who she's the SP, she works at the centre in Brisbane, Lungri Tangpa. And years ago in the 80s, when I was living up at Chen Raising Institute, she invited 3 of us nuns to come and give a talk for 90 minutes at Lungri Tangpa. So we did. And then they transcribed the talks. And then the 2 other nuns took 8 pages and mine were 24. So I'm speaking a lot slower today. So maybe it'll only be about 15 pages. But still, it's probably then more like about 4 in the afternoon. I know I always say this, and I feel stupid saying it, but I've said it, okay? So I think we finish, unless there's any urgent questions. I think just think about them. What?
Could we just ask Venerable Robina? Matt's just asking that passage that you just read, just to clarify, is that in Lama Yeshe's book? Or
I'm reading Lama's book. Every word I'm reading is from Lama's book, Mahamudra. I'm sure you can get it. I don't know if you've got physical copies there, but it's been out since 2018. And I'm sure you can get it if you Kindle or something. I'm sure it's available. I hope it is. It's terrible if it's not. But you can get it from America. Mahamudra. It's called Mahamudra, How to Discover Our True Nature. Yeah.
The e-book is available on the FPMT website. I'll send
Oh, brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So good. So happy. Okay. Okay, darling people. So we dedicate. We think we've been a couple of hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, nearly as many moments as there have been, is as many thoughts each of us has had. And every one of those thoughts has gone into our mind. And it's like as many seeds as we planted. So it's all been delicious. 5 hours of hard work we've done. How amazing. How delightful. How fantastic. So I'd like you to, were you going to sing them, Jason, or you want me to sing them? Which is which?
I can do it, yes.
Okay, so then I think it's good to say the English so we know what we're saying. This first prayer is meaning what I just said. All these thoughts we've done, all this virtue we've created. We're making this aspiration, as the prayer says, exactly. So say that in English, Jason.
Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a
Guru Buddha.
and lead all
transmigratory beings without exception to that state. Good. And this next one, now do the other one. It's very nice. Do the previous one. Go there. This is the same prayer, but it's the due to this. Oh, different. No, okay, skip. Go to the next one. Just go to the bodhicitta. That's enough. This way. Okay. This is this aspiration of this amazing wish to be a benefit to others. So yeah, go on.
May the precious supreme bodhicitta, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and
more and more. Okay. So we delight in what we've done, be happy with what we've done, as Lama says, be satisfied, whatever we've gotten from this. But even if we don't remember, but even if we don't know, it's gone in, you know, it's gone in, and next time we hear it, it'll nourish it a bit more. So be happy with that process. It's not as if it goes in one ear and out the other. It goes in even if we don't remember it. So be very delighted by that. And every time we hear it, and this is why one day the penny will drop, because you've heard it before. It's fantastic. So kind. That's all.
It's so wonderful. And we're hoping that tomorrow you'll be able to read the text to us, please, in the same way. The text at the end of
We can do that. We can read Panchen Lama's text, yeah.
Yeah,
We can
that
do
would
that.
be beautiful.
The imprint. We can do that. So then